What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Brothers in Tech here on themesh.tv. Brothers in Tech is our ongoing technology discussion show with a special focus on looking at home technology or family technology, or just ways to make your own personal life more efficient and making better use of the technology around you. I am one of the Brothers in Tech, Alan Jackson. With me, the other Brothers in Tech, Brian Jackson. How you doing, Brian?
Good, Alan. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, doing all right.
Yeah.
We are recording this. This is kind of a bonus episode. This is not one of our typical themes that we try to do on a monthly basis. This is just something given at the time of this recording, and given some of the changes I think people are experiencing and some of the uncertainty, we felt it was a kind of an appropriate thing to jump in and talk about. A lot of people, obviously with COVID-19, with kind of the pandemic going on in the world right now, a lot of people are finding themselves still working, but maybe working from home for the first time ever, or maybe they've worked from home in the past, but not for quite the extended period of time that this possibly could be.
Yeah.
At the time of recording here, this is in late March, and we're kind of right in the thick of it right now. But we thought this might be a good time to be a resource for people and maybe need some help or advice on the best ways to work from home. Right, Brian?
Yeah. Yeah, those that are potentially choosing to work from home, and those that, quite honestly, are being forced to work from home. Yeah. And we want to make sure that we give some advice because it's not always an easy transition. And as easy as it may seem like it is, there's all sorts of little techie quirks that I think that we potentially could give some tips to try to head off at the pass. So. Yeah, I think this is great. Hopefully we can help some people out in the time that they're being kind of put into this unique situation. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so it's a little less scripted on this episode. We're really just, Brian and I have a lot of notes and ideas and things from our own experience.
Less prepared?
Less prepared, less prepared than normal, which is very little prepared.
Okay.
No, but Brian and I both have enough experience working from remote locations. I mean, we're both working from remote locations as we record this. Remote locations, working on the road, working from home. So a lot of these same practices kind of apply. So, Brian, let's kind of start off, and before we get into more of the technical side of it, let's talk more about what we've kind of just seen from a workplace and work environment around us. What are some things, Brian, you recommend when you know you're going to be working from home? What do you need to do first off to kind of get yourself set up?
Yeah, and this is something I'll be honest with you, I struggled with for quite a while because I obviously do work from home a decent amount. I try to get work done while I'm at home. But one of the hardest things that you're going to have is if you don't have a dedicated office, which there are people who don't have a dedicated room to be able to pull away from others that might have to also be working in your house, or children, or things that, let's just say, things that don't have your same objective in mind.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to find that special space, right? That separate space that's going to give you the privacy. For me, I ended up moving my office, which of course before was a desk in the middle of our living room. I moved that upstairs recently so that I could work in a small space, have some privacy, not bother my wife, who is also going to be having to do some work from home, and make sure that we each have our own space. So I think finding that space where you feel comfortable working, but that you also feel like you can pull away from others in your house to make sure that you're comfortable doing your work, I think is pretty important. So I think, to me, that's step number one. Find the space where you feel like you can be separate and be able to concentrate and not have to kind of have the interruptions that may kind of put your work on pause. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's just, again, it's kind of realizing you're now in a different environment, trying to do the same thing you were doing in a different place before. it's almost like you're trying to recreate that other environment as best you can. Your office environment. If your office environment was set up where you were able to really be focused and you kind of had your own privacy around you, try to mimic that the best you can in your home environment. It does make it a lot easier for the transition. On that same note, Brian, kind of resembling what it is you had at your office environment, I know for me personally, and I think maybe you're the same way, at my office, I have a second monitor where I work off of my primary, but I have a second monitor because I tend to always need that. It's really important for me to have that same exact monitor set up at my home office because it's really jarring to go from 2 screens in my office, in my work office, to 1 screen on my home. And things that I was used to seeing in 2 different places or having windows spread out, I'm now having to see jammed into one spot. So I made sure I had a second monitor at my home. And actually, it's the exact same monitor I've got at the office. I made sure I got the same size. So honestly, when I unplug from the work office and I go to the home office, plug into the monitor, everything looks exactly the same. Everything is laid out the same way. I don't need to rearrange windows or change anything around. That was really important for me. And I think that's helped a lot in the transition process there.
No, I think to me, that is incredibly important. And if you're someone who's not worked with a second screen before, maybe you have a desktop computer at your work and you have a laptop that you try to use from home. And maybe that's been fine because your main work happens on the big desktop monitor and you get home and all you need to really do is reply to a couple of emails. Well, now you're potentially in a place where you might need multiple screens up or multiple windows up at the same time. I think a second screen or an extended monitor, I've been really happy with how that's helped my workflow.
Yeah.
For example, email, which I unfortunately will keep up almost all the time, looking for things that are coming in to be able to respond to. I can now put that on my laptop monitor, put it to the side, and it's there when I need to look at it. But now I have the external monitor as where I'm actually doing the work, maybe 2 documents side by side. Maybe I'm trying to pull information from one to the other. So I actually find my work productivity increases when I have a little bit more desktop space to work with digitally. And I wanted to say, if you've got the capability of having an external screen, try it, use it. If you have a monitor at home, extend your desktop. If you don't, the other thing that I might suggest is, you can do this in other ways too. Maybe you can AirPlay to a TV that you have in a room that you're not using. You might be able to, if you're someone in the Apple ecosystem and you have a tablet, there's now an app called Sidecar, which allows you to put your iPad next to your laptop, extend the screen so that your mouse can go over to that screen and be able to put things aside.
It's very cool.
There's a lot of little ways of doing that, of screen kind of extension. And I would highly advise looking into that, because going home and having to do all your normal work on a smaller screen could potentially cause you problems with headaches of being able to, stare at a smaller screen, but just not feel as though you're able to do things as efficiently.
Just really the message is try to mimic your typical office work environment. From a screen and layout standpoint as much as you can at home, so there's less disruption going back and forth between the two.
I think mimic it or even make it better. Quite honestly,
well,
this may be an opportunity for you to realize that, hey, but at home, at work, I have a desktop computer, but at home, I potentially could have 2 screens, which actually I may find makes my workflow work a lot more effectively. So
2 screens. I mean, honestly, if I had my way, I would get a 3rd screen in my office because I find enough uses for that screen real estate for sure. So
yep, for sure.
What else, Brian? About the workplace
going back again to trying to make things as close to work as possible. One of the things that I struggle with is, there's some positives from working from home, right? There's some positives in that now I don't have the commute time, that I have to build into my day. But the downside of it is that if you are in your work, if you're at home trying to do work, you also are being pulled of all the other things that you try to do in your home. Okay, there's that thing. I can see that my yard needs to be mowed. I can tell that I need to clean this room. I need to do different things.
Yeah.
And it may become very easy to get distracted and pulled away from that. So my advice would be, create a calendar, create a schedule, and actually make it so this is my work time.
Yep.
I've done that with my wife and I've done that where we say, okay, I'm heading to work, which means going upstairs and I have a certain number of hours that, I'm going to be working and
Yep.
she's going to be working. And then we'll have after work time to be able to do the things that we need to do. It's nice in that we can take those breaks, and those breaks are a lot more enjoyable at home than they were at work.
Sure.
But I do think it's important to kind of put yourself a calendar to where you're actually mimicking some work hours.
No, I completely agree. It's tough. It is really tough to do, but it's really, really helpful if you can make yourself structured like that. I say even go a step further when it comes to your time and scheduling. If you are in a work group and everybody kind of needs to be aware of each other's schedule, well, if you're working in a physical work office, it's a little easier to know, is somebody there in their office or not, and are they in a meeting or not? When you're working remotely, you don't know. You don't know if your coworkers are in a call. You don't know if your coworkers are in a meeting, if you're needing to contact them or talk to them. So I think just like with the hours of work, I think it's important to also keep up your online calendar. If you have any kind of shared calendar or calendar that other coworkers look at, keep it up to date. Keep it just like you're there physically in the office. Like, I'm on a call at this time. I'm in a meeting at this time. Because again, if people are trying to reach you or people need to talk to you or call you, you don't want it to be a kind of a hit or miss. They hope they can catch you because you're not in the office. They don't have the luxury of walking by your office to see if you're there or dropping in to ask you a question. So keeping your work calendar up to date and shared with whoever has access to that calendar becomes even more important, I think, than it is in a physical work environment. So
I agree.
Very, very tough.
I agree.
And then I'll just mention this last one. This has nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with equipment, but kind of along the same lines, Brian, what you were saying about the scheduling your work hours and really treating it like you're going to work. It means get dressed too, just dress like you would dress like you're going to work. I know people look at it and they think it's great to work in your pajamas or, not wear anything at all. I mean, who knows, whatever your lifestyle is.
Yeah.
But I do think there's some science and logic behind the idea that if you don't feel like you're working, your brain is not geared for working. And I think your dress and prepping for work is just as important as anything else. So
I honestly think this is incredibly important, and especially since you are on this podcast shirtless right now, which I think is just disgusting. But I really would have appreciated you to give me a heads up of that.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Hey, it's all about comfort too, right? No, I think, the more you can pretend like you are doing things at work, and I think it's going to be very easy to kind of get sucked into I can just cruise into my office in my house to do work and then cruise out and go back and forth. Having a set schedule of, all right, let's go into work time, and dressing, maybe not dressing up like you normally do to work, but certainly preparing yourself for this is time where I'm actually working. And of course, when we get to video conferencing in a minute, it certainly helps to look more professional as you're doing it.
Well,
to try to at least keep that semblance.
I have two boys that live at the house that are school age kids. I mean, they're older, but they're still living at the house. And I mean, my wife works from home 80% of the time, so she's kind of more of the pro at this than I am. Even we both have a standing rule with the kids where we just say, "Look, 8:00, we're working. I mean, we may just be in this next room, we may be in the office there, but that doesn't mean that we're all around and accessible in the house. We are working. It'd be just like if we were down the street working in a building. We'll take breaks. We'll have our lunch, we'll check in on things, but we're still working. So we just ask everybody else in the house to respect that as well. And it takes a little while, but I mean, we're getting there. Yep.
Yeah. But these are unique times, so they require some structure.
Having everybody at home at the same time for days on end is not something we're used to.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more specifically about some of the equipment and kind of needs that we find that are a little more useful or things we need to just keep in mind while we're working from home, Brian. Yeah.
Well, so I've got one, Alan, and this one actually came to be helpful for me just recently. So when I saw that I'm in the education field, when we started to move things to online teaching, and it became mandated in the last week and a half, the the first thing that I did is call my internet provider and wanted to check on my internet speed and try to see whether or not it would be cost effective to upgrade that speed, because I knew that, it could be nothing more frustrating than trying to do video conferencing and trying to do more work from home and having it be sluggish to where I'm going to be frustrated.
Yeah.
So this is kind of my tip for all of you, is that I would certainly get in the habit, and this is probably a good thing even without this kind of crisis, to every so often call your internet provider, call your cable provider, call your phone service, and just tell them that you're thinking of leaving them and see if they can help you out to try to enhance what you have. In my case, not to get techie about it, but we have a 30 meg up and down service at our house that we were paying for, only internet. I called them to see what would be the next step up that I could go. And turns out by the end of the call, I enhanced mine from 30 to 50, and I'm actually paying $16 less a month than I was before.
Nice.
So they had a feature out there. They already had a new service that they just obviously didn't inform me about, which I think these companies are notorious at doing.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. It's like they're not calling me to say, can we charge you less?
We'd like to make less money off of you and give you more. Is that okay? Right.
So, I would say I'm paying less than I was before. I'm getting a faster internet. And I think that during this crisis, there's a lot of companies that are actually running better deals because they know that they need a better internet experience for you. So,
especially, kids doing a lot of online learning at home, that ties up a lot of bandwidth. And I think it's a good time to be approaching. Just be mindful that as of the time we're recording this, I guarantee there's a lot of people making those calls and having those conversations. So it may not be as quick a thing to do as you'd like, but I think it's a good time to at least approach it if you feel like your internet speed could be impacted. And really the biggest places you're going to see internet slowdowns that could be frustrating, video conferencing, you could see some real hiccups with that. If your kids are doing online learning or training through video classrooms, which my kids are doing right now, that ties up a lot of bandwidth. So just a couple things to keep in mind that you're really going to notice it. Video streaming, video conferencing are going to eat up a lot of bandwidth, and if you're finding it really sluggish and impacting your ability to work, then you definitely want to see what you can do about increasing the speed.
Well, and this may be the one time where you start to notice that there is a difference between download speed and upload speed.
That's right.
Normally we are consumers of internet, right? You come home and you're pulling things in, you're streaming things in. Well, now you're in a work environment where me as an educator, I'm going to be uploading videos. I'm going to record a video, upload it, right? So now I need speed to actually get it up on the web. And so it might be important. You might be paying for a service that you feel like, oh, this is really fast internet, but maybe you haven't had to look at the upload speed, which might be brutally slow. So checking on that. So.
Probably the most common use right now for upload speed or upload and download speed simultaneously is video conferencing. When you are video conferencing with someone, a two-way video conference, that is equally using your download and upload speed, because it's not only downloading what you see coming to you, but you're uploading your own video up to the web as well. So that's normally the biggest culprit when you see video conferencing speed slow down. It's because the upload speed's not that great on your connection. Yeah. Like for example, we have 100 megabit download at our home right now, but it's only like a 10 upload.
Yeah.
So, we may be able to download stuff really, really fast. We don't have any problem with video streaming, but the minute we try to do a video conference, we can see the quality gets knocked down, and that's because our upload speed is not very, very good. So that's something good to keep in mind.
Yeah, I agree.
On that same note about kind of speed and just better way to be connected, I know wireless is great. Wireless is super easy and it's just convenient. Every device you can get now has wireless built in. So if you have a Wi-Fi home network, you can do internet anywhere, and that's awesome. However, if you are in a office in your home, like a static location where that's where you're going to do a huge bulk of your work, and you are doing a lot of video conferencing, or you're doing a lot of streaming of video or anything else, or uploading of video or files to people, you may want to consider looking at going with a wired connection, if at all possible, to your device. And what we mean by that is if your device has an Ethernet, kind of the fat phone cable looking cable, and you're near your modem or your router, wherever you're getting your internet from, and it allows you to plug in a hardwired connection to it, you're going to have much, much stronger, more reliable signal no matter what. You always are.
Right.
Wireless is always susceptible to interference, is susceptible to range, how far away you are from the router, all of that. Wired is pretty much a constant, or for the most part, a very solid constant connection to your internet. So definitely for video conferencing, if you're going to be doing a lot of video webinars, seminars, leading meetings on a regular basis, and you're doing it from one consistent location in your home office, I really would strongly encourage you to look at getting a wired connection to your cable modem or router or whatever device you're connecting to get the internet. I think you'll find a much more consistent experience there. Would you agree with that, Brian?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you have the capability, wire it, and it's just going to be so much cleaner. There's many times where, you kind of think of it this way: if you had a water spigot and you had that water spigot divided across 10 different sub-spigots, right? Yep. And it's flushing it all out. That's what Wi-Fi is doing. And if one requires a little more, it pulls from some of the others. Whereas if you had 2 spigots, one of those spigots is directly to where you want it to go. That's what the wire is going to do. So that's going to continue to get the internet. And I'd say if you can't do that, let's say you're not close to your modem, you might even want to. There are some ways you can even go into some of the Wi-Fi routers and actually tweak them to be able to say this particular connection, which is my computer, that gets first dibs. There are ways that some of those mesh routers might be able to do that, where you can say this particular IP address, which I have, is going to be mine, and I want that to be first dibs across anything that's pulling information. So
kind of getting like a priority setting to certain devices.
There are certain Wi-Fi routers that will allow you to do that. It's a little bit more, that's a little bit more in depth of what you have to do, but there might be some ways that you can make it so that your computer gets the internet and everything else takes a back seat if there's something competing.
That is good. That's honestly something I don't do, and I probably need to consider adding nowadays, because two teenage boys living at home, they're doing their schoolwork, but they're also playing a lot of video games, and they're doing a lot of online chat with their friends. That sucks down a lot of bandwidth. I probably need to make sure that my wife and our computers are a little higher priority during the workday. So good call on that.
Yep.
Another thing on the little more technical side, and again, this is just if you're someone who can do this and feels comfortable with this, routers or wireless routers or your home router that manages your internet connection, it's typically either something provided by your service provider or something you bought yourself and connected up to your physical line. You do want to make sure that those routers are up to date. There's new firmware that comes out, new software updates for these routers to make them run smoother and to keep them more secure. If you know how to access your router either through like a web interface, that's typically the way you would do it, or maybe a mobile app like my Google Wi-Fi network at home. I have a mobile app to control it. You want to make sure it's up to date. You want to make sure that there's a place to check for updates or download any new firmware. That's going to keep your router not only more secure, which is always good, keep it up to date security-wise, but may even work out some details of getting you the best possible speed you can get out of your router. So I do recommend kind of checking in on that and making sure that it's up to date. And I typically try to get in a habit like every few days of just restarting the router just in general, just to kind of flush out anything that may be slowing me down or kind of keeping my connection from being the best it can. Just powering it down for a few minutes and powering it back up, maybe once a week or so. It may be a little overkill for me, but it's something I do just to make sure I'm not building up anything on that router that's going to be slowing me down over time.
Yep, good call. Yep. On that, really quick on that note, Alan, I've found that it's also helpful if you're now going to be working from home every day and you've got a computer now set up at home. Most people, they maybe have a laptop they're bringing home and then it's accessing the internet and then going away and coming back. I've actually found that it's much cleaner for me to even turn my computer off at night and have it restart in the morning to clear out some of the connections that it has, given that I'm going to have to be doing these things, these high intense video conferencing.
It's true.
To me, it's just, I'm even going to go in and maybe set up the schedule for it to automatically restart itself, at 2 a.m.
Might as well,
so that I know I have something. Because, again, I could have set it up perfectly yesterday, but something's happened in the meantime that now that video conference looks really, really bad, and I need to quit a lot of other applications. So I think doing a restart on Wi-Fi maybe once a week, doing a restart on your computer probably every morning, just to make sure you're starting out with clean settings, I think is helpful.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Hey, Brian, what's some additional supplies or equipment maybe that's needed if you don't have it already to really make sure you're working from home really well?
Yeah, well, one that I would suggest, and this probably is not necessary for people, but it could be beneficial, and I decided to do it, was to buy an external webcam. Most computers have a webcam built into them, but the problem with it is that it is in a place that usually we're a little hunched over looking at this, camera. True. It's not that
mainly
clean
the
of
ones
a way
built
of
into
doing it.
you're talking about the ones built into a laptop.
Yeah, the laptops.
A
lot of the laptops are obviously
it's
they have
not always
them
the
on
best
there, which
angle.
is great.
Yeah,
which is great for mobile computing and being able to get quick access to a camera. But I bought an external a webcam, one that I can put on top of this external monitor that I'm using now. Mm-hmm. And it just makes it more natural for me to look straight ahead when I'm on these video conferencing. This one, actually, I bought one that had a little light on it so that nice. I don't have to turn a blinding desk light on in my face so that people can see me at night. And they're incredibly inexpensive. I think this one was maybe $25 that I bought, but it's a little better image than I have on my laptop, and it provides a little more comfortable way. I don't have to be slumped over to look at the camera, bending my neck down. I can take a little bit more natural posture. So I would suggest an external webcam if you can.
I would definitely say if you are in a role, your job, your career, where you are on the video camera or going to be on the camera a lot, investing in a different webcam is probably good. And granted, the ones like on our laptops, on our MacBooks are good webcams. I mean, they're great.
Sure, absolutely.
But if you really want to make sure you're looking as good as possible and it's a natural position for you to be in, that $20, $30, $40 webcam is probably a well worth investment. Yep. On the same side with we'll talk about video conferencing a little bit more in detail. We've got a few more things to talk about with video conferencing in a bit. But on that same note, kind of as far as equipment goes, headphones, noise canceling headphones especially would be really great in these situations. I think, a lot of us have earbuds or things that come with our phone, or maybe a lot of AirPods, wireless AirPods. They're great. I mean, those will work fine for hearing conference calls, for being a part of those. But if you really want to have a good listening experience and not be distracted by a lot of other stuff going on, noise canceling headphones, I definitely recommend the ones that are more over the ear type of things. Just means that not only can you really hear extremely well, but you're not distracted by a lot of outside noise. And I think that's really important for listening and hearing while you're working from home.
Yeah. I have a pair that I use, and I just use it when I'm working. I don't tend to use it when I'm video conferencing because I don't like them seeing a huge, cans around my ears as much. But I'll use it when I'm working. I'll just turn those on. Maybe I have music going lightly in the background, or maybe I'll just use that as a way of blocking out everything else that's going on in the house.
That's true. They're not the most really sightly looking if you're the one leading a video conference. But again, if it's critical that you're able to hear and not be distracted, I think that's a good way to go. Yep. I'll just jump in here. A couple real quick little hardware things I wanted to mention that are not going to apply to everybody, but I think some things to keep in mind. Biggest problem I have whenever I work from home is that I don't always have all the same connections or adapters or things that I do in my work office. I'm a Mac user, and unfortunately, that's one of the trade-offs we have for being a Mac user. Is we have a lot of dongles to have to keep up with. My Mac laptop only has one type of connection on it, a USB-C connection. So everything I want to connect to it, hard drives, anything at all, connecting my phone to it, webcams, all that has to have adapters. And I've got all that I set up at my work office, but when I come home, in the past, I've always come home and been like, oh, well, I can't even hook up half this stuff because I don't have the right adapters or cables. So I just say take a couple extra minutes and look at what it is you need to have hooked up on a regular basis. Make sure you replicate or have those same adapters at your home office so that you're not struggling to try to figure out how to connect things or make things work together. All that is doing is taking up time away from your workday in a home work environment and probably frustrating you a little bit too. It certainly does me. Same thing for me goes with keyboards and mice, just if you're used to using a full-size keyboard and a nice mouse in a work environment, why go home and now you're using the little trackpad and your laptop keyboard? Again, it's another learning curve you have to go through going between your home and your work office. Again, keyboards and mice you can get pretty inexpensively. It's a good idea to just go ahead and kind of replicate that work office in your home environment with little tools like that as much as you can.
Yeah. I mean, the key is, these laptops that we have, they're made for portability.
Yeah.
And they're made to be able to work on your lap. They're made to be able to work on a bus. They're made to be able to work in lots of different places, but they are extremely powerful. So you can connect the external monitor to it, the keyboard to it, the speakers to it, the other things, and make it so that you have something as strong as maybe your desktop machine at your office might be. It's just, you want to get away probably, if you're going to be starting to work more time on a laptop, you got to start worrying about things like, your posture working on that laptop, the bending over and kind of looking into the webcam, all the things that you can make it so that's a more comfortable working environment, I think is helpful. So
absolutely.
I just want to mention one more thing, Alan. We were talking about equipment and software, but this is a really good time if you don't use it already for kind of some of the sharing features. Google Docs, for example, to be able to work simultaneously with someone. Slack has become a really popular way of kind of exchanging kind of work information. Office 365, has a share feature. And you may not have needed that as much if you were going to be seeing the person next to you in the office. But now you've got to figure out a way to seamlessly work remotely. And I think those share features can be incredibly helpful. And so, if you're not using those already, if you're someone who has typically just used Office, Word, Excel, and then shared things via email, well, there's some other great things that you might want to dive into to make that work experience a little bit more effective.
Well, and plus those sharing capabilities also allow better collaboration. Again, if you're not in a situation where you're used to printing out something you were working on and going next door to your coworker and you sit down and work through any changes, then you go back and make them. Well, you don't quite have that capability as easy anymore. So turning on the sharing means that you can share a document on a Google Drive, on a Microsoft Office account, and share it with someone, and someone has the capability of going in and editing or making changes or making notes on it, and you can work together that way. So it does give you a lot of that collaborative tools that you would normally maybe take for granted when you're working in a more traditional office environment. Yeah.
Yep. All right,
so that's a lot of equipment software.
The elephant in the room here, Alan.
Let's go ahead and dig into it. We've kind of tiptoed around it, but we are now in a world where video conferencing is going to become more and more important than it ever has been before. People talking over video. I mean, you turn on the TV now to watch any late night shows or news programs, and more of the people are now having to do video conferencing to do their job. So we're all in the same boat. I mean, Brian and I are using video conferencing right now to record these shows. It's kind of our world now. So let's talk about some tips for specifically what to do about video conferencing.
Well, can I first of all just say, realize there are multiple ways of doing video conferencing.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're using Zoom. My university's using Zoom. I think a lot of people across the country are using Zoom, which is a great business meeting, video conferencing tool, but there's others, right? I mean, there's Google Hangouts, there's Skype, there's even just FaceTime. There's lots of ways of doing this, and some of the things we're going to mention are going to be common across all of them. One thing I would mention, use headphones. Use headphones and headphones that potentially have a microphone built into them. And, for me, there's really nothing more frustrating than being on a conference call with lots of people, and there maybe be one person that doesn't have the headphones and they have their speakers turned up to be able to hear what everybody's saying, but yet it's feeding right back into the microphone and everybody else hears an echo. You can keep that from happening by having everybody, try to use headphones so that they're hearing what needs to happen. They don't have to have their speakers turned up, and you don't have to hear the echo of everything happening after that.
Of course, I realize as you're giving this advice, this is the one time you and I have recorded where I am not wearing headphones, and you probably are hearing the echo from the speakers in the room. So
a little bit.
I apologize.
I'm not naming names here, but I'm saying that there is nothing more frustrating than having someone not wear their headphones during some communication.
No, this is the one time.
Can I just say that again? There is nothing more frustrating than having someone that really doesn't follow the rules. So,
well, if you think about it, it's true. I mean, granted, we joke about it because unfortunately I'm failing in this rule right now during this recording. But you're right. I mean, if you think about the logistics of it, I mean, if sound is coming out of your computer speakers to where anybody in the room could hear what's going on your computer, but then you're using your microphone on your webcam or on your computer, that technically means if you just follow the logic, they are now hearing themselves through that.
Yep.
Where if you're wearing headphones, only you are hearing them. They're not hearing themselves. So yeah, it makes perfect sense with that.
Yep.
Another thing I'd recommend kind of on that same thing with sound and quality of sound, Brian, is testing. A lot of these services that you use, I know Zoom, GoToMeeting, all these things will let you in like the preferences when you're setting up. They'll let you test and you can actually hear what you sound like. So the idea is you may think you've got a great microphone. You may think your sound is wonderful, but you don't want it to be where everybody listening to you now, you sound horrible because your voice is muddled, you're too far away from the microphone or whatever. So I really recommend whatever service you use, like for example, in Zoom, you can go to the preferences in Zoom and say you want to test your connection or do an audio or video test. Yep. And it will let you hear what it's going to sound like when somebody's talking to you. And then it'll record you for a few seconds talking, play it back for you so you can hear what they're going to hear when you get on the call with them. To me, it's invaluable because I don't ever want to be that person on a call and leading a large conversation and hardly anybody can hear me really well. And I don't realize it, and then of course, if somebody lets you know in the middle of a call that your call's not great, your audio's not great, you got to stop and deal with that and try to figure it out. It's something you can test in advance with these tools and make sure that you're sounding as good as you think you are.
Yep, for sure. Lighting is an important thing with video conferencing. I mentioned to you that I have an external webcam now that I'm using. It has a little light ring around it, and so it provides a little bit of light, which is helpful. But test out your lighting. Very similar to the way you're saying, test out your audio, test out your video, and see whether it provides your other conference goers the image that you are hoping for. So an easy way to think of this is if you were going to have someone take a picture of you, you know how you always try to move and say, okay, where is it that the light is in my face rather than behind me, right? Same thing applies. If you set up your office environment where, I happen to be in a tricky spot and then I have skylights back behind me, if it gets really bright back there, all of a sudden I have a shadow on my face and you can't see who I am. I was on a video conference the other day and, the person was in front of a window and all I could see was a shadow of them. So I can't see things like facial expressions and all of that, which make this much less personable. I mean, the video conferencing can be extremely personable. You can see body language, you can see interactions as long as you're setting it up correctly. So I would suggest if you don't already have maybe a desk light, something that you can even put behind your monitor, turn it on. It doesn't have to be directly in your face, but it needs to light from the front so that people can see your smiling face. So
well, and here's even a little cheap quickie option that people always forget. Let's say you don't have a good desk light or a webcam light, and you're in a little bit of a darker office or darker space at your home. remember that if you're right in front of your computer or you've got an external monitor, those monitors and that laptop screen or computer screen has a brightness. And I've had to use this in a couple situations where I'm somewhere that doesn't have a good lighting. I just turn the brightness up on my computer screen and my other secondary monitor, turn it up as high as it'll go and let that cast a little bit of light on my face. Again, it's not ideal, but if it's just a key matter of making sure people can see you and that's all you have to work with, it's actually not bad. Now, I do recommend in those situations, if you've got an external monitor, go to as clean a white screen as possible, whether it's a website with just a lot of text and not a lot of graphics, something that's a lot of bright white space. That'll shine really nicely on your face and at least give you a little bit of a better glow and you'll look a little better. Yeah. Again, it doesn't rival a dedicated camera light or desk light, but in a pinch, it will help. So,
it's good. I mean, even turn your desktop image to blank, to white.
Yeah, just a blank white
so
screen.
Your background on your
you.
desktop, so all of a sudden you get more brightness. Yeah,
simple, easy, quick way to do it. So good.
So,
you always see these jokes or even commercials that joke about like video conference calls and people who just don't quite manage their own volume or their ability to speak very well. And a couple of these other ones are going to be keying right into like kind of these stereotypes. But this idea of when you're on a video conference call and you're not the one talking, you're maybe just the one listening, put yourself on mute. Sometimes if you're in a classroom setting, the instructor will do it for you. They'll actually put you all on mute. But if you don't, if you're not being regimented like that, do it anyway. And I know can be problematic if you do decide to speak up and you forget to turn it off on mute, and you got to remember to do that. But the background noise, all the other sounds that could creep in when you're not on mute, even things like sniffing and sneezing and coughing, all of that, if you don't put yourself on mute, you have no idea how loud it could be for everybody else or distracting for everybody else listening on the call. So just play it safe and go on mute unless you absolutely know you're getting ready to say something. Right?
Yeah, and get really proficient at turning yourself on and off with mute, right? Yeah. Find out where that is, whether it's on Skype or if it's on Zoom, and get very proficient with it. So when that question does pop up that you're supposed to chime in, that there's not a lot of fumbling to go figure out how to unmute yourself and vice versa, but practice that. And no, I totally agree with you. I think that's a really important thing.
Most of these software applications like Zoom or GoToMeeting actually have a keyboard shortcut for mute. So if it's not something where you want to figure out trying to move your mouse cursor to find the mute button on the screen, if you just learn the keyboard command and just have it kind of ready, like, that's what I press. I do that Command M for mute and Command M to unmute me. And just kind of get in the habit of doing it. That's a much quicker way to do it as well.
No, I agree. On that same note about kind of video conferencing faux pas, check your surroundings and kind of have an idea of what those surrounding problems might be. For example, I'm in a little bit of an issue here, and that right behind me is a stairway going downstairs. And so that means that it's very possible, if my wife doesn't know that I'm on a conference call, she may start to come up the stairs, then realize, panic, see that I'm on the conference call and turn around. And that, of course, distracts everybody else that's watching. I think we've all probably seen the viral video of the guy on a conference call and the kid behind, his young child comes in and starts to, kind of distract everybody else from behind. So I think checking your surroundings, getting an idea of what those surroundings look like and what could potential disruptions be. Try to minimize those as much as possible. Zoom has a really cool feature of adding a background so that it almost treats your background as a green screen and kind of puts you somewhere else. And that's to help some of those distractors go away and maybe even change them to, a nighttime scene or something. But I think that's helpful. I mean, there's lots of, like I said, there's lots of those mistakes that have happened and people have gotten caught having kind of embarrassing situations.
Absolutely.
Happen, so.
Yeah, no, I definitely give it a kind of a test run. Make sure you know how it's going to look. Think about those scenarios. Who could be walking behind you? Who could be else be in the frame? Here, I'm in my little studio setup, and there's a door behind me with glass. So if somebody walks by that door, I mean, it's totally, you could see them walk by. Little things like that. You just got to keep in mind.
Can I add something really quick on that, Alan? Because it's in line with that as well. because of things like Zoom, and Zoom specifically, I think Skype's going to do a similar thing. But some of those features when you're in that conference call, that it is set up to be full screen, and Zoom has a feature that says, oh, okay, well, whoever's talking, we're going to put their face front and center.
Mm-hmm.
So all you're seeing is whoever's talking. So make it very meeting oriented. Well, in a case like a classroom where I may have 30 or 40 students all on the same call, one thing that people maybe fail to realize is that you're still being recorded, or you're still being, your image is still potentially being broadcast to others, even though you're not on the screen. So you may look and go, well, they're on the screen, so nobody else is seeing them.
Good call.
And, you've probably seen the video of someone, maybe going to the bathroom and deciding, they're just listening, so nobody knows what's happening. Those are things to watch out for too, and just realize that your camera's still on. You're still getting videoed, even though you may not be front and center on your screen. You may be in someone else's gallery view, and everybody can see what you're doing. So,
yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's true. It's like all these services have a way of recording the calls, which is great, meaning you can record your video conferences, but the one person's head up at a time is a display preference when you're actually watching the webinar. It is still recording, and you can still view everybody's face at the same time if you choose to in the recording. So good call on that for sure.
Yeah.
And this is a big one for me. We're probably getting a little more down the road for people who are leading webinars, but I mean, there's a fair number of people out there doing that. Test out some of the things you plan to do in a webinar or a video conference in advance. I'm talking about things like if you're going to share your desktop, if you're going to pull up a document to share with somebody, make sure you've tried that out before you do it. I've sat through way too many video conferences where somebody is just deciding to try out a new feature they've never done before, like sharing a image they've got, and they've never done it before, so it takes several minutes for them to figure it out, and it's annoying and takes up valuable time everybody's trying to save. So test these things out. If you're going to share a spreadsheet, try going up on your Zoom or GoToMeeting service. Do a private one to begin with, and just try pulling up the documents, and make sure you can do it the right way. Most of these services will let you share your desktop or share a window that you have pulled up. Just make sure you know and you're comfortable how to do that. And on that same note, you wrote this note down, Brian, but I'm so glad you did. I'm really finicky about if I know I'm going to be in a webinar and I'm going to be sharing my desktop or sharing something on my computer, I clear off everything off my desktop, other files. I don't want people to be able to see the names of files on my desktop. I don't want to have a cluttered desktop. So I make sure it's a clean desktop. So that way, if I do need to go to my desktop at any point to bring up a file to show them, at least they're not looking at this huge cluttered desktop of files all over the place. I actually have a utility that I didn't really plan for like a Brothers in Tech suggestion for this episode, but I will say this would probably be the one I would give if we were going to have one. And it's called OneSwitch. It's a utility I have installed on my Mac that up in my menu bar, it gives me several things I can do with this OneSwitch. Things like automatically play a playlist on iTunes. I can have my computer not go to sleep for a certain amount of time. So if I want to have to stay awake for a long period of time, other things like that. But one of the switches on there is to hide all my desktop items. So in other words, when I flip that switch, everything on my desktop disappears. It's still there. It's just hiding it. So if I'm doing a webinar or doing a video conferencing and there's a chance I may need to show my desktop at some point, it's fine. I don't have to worry about it. I just say, go ahead and hide my desktop items. It's a nice clean desktop. And then when I am done with the call, I can go back and switch it back off and all my desktop items show back up. And it's just a little peace of mind that, my file labeled lawsuit or something is not just showing up on my desktop for people to wonder and question about, So, right.
Yep. Yeah. Your receipt for adult diapers that you have
exactly.
on your desktop.
That's my business. I don't need anybody else to see it. So, right.
No, it's funny because it's something you don't think a lot about, but, from someone who goes in and teaches classes, quite often that I'll go in, plug my computer in, and then happen to realize that, wait a minute, my email is up and students are seeing it right now without me recognizing that it's up there. those are the things that have made me ultra aware of it, and to make sure that, clear everything else off, make sure that when you share your screen, they're seeing only what you want them to see and not everything else that you've been working on or doing. And so, at a minimum, at least quit every other application that you have prior to starting that video conference, right? But I love the app. You actually mentioned that a few episodes ago, and I've been using it, and it's fantastic. The One Switch to, use that. So
cool.
I think that's great.
Well, that's a lot of good advice. I mean, I think there's probably some more I'm sure we could come up with, but I think that's the main things that I know you and I have experienced when doing our own work from home situation. And I hope as more and more people are trying to kind of get adjusted to doing that in their own lives, that hopefully some of these things are helpful there. So
and Alan, since we didn't do bits, I'll just mention one quick thing, and you can. There's lots of different options of this, but also make sure that you are taking appropriate breaks at home. I think it can be very easy now that you don't have your commute time to all of a sudden progress late into the night working, when before you knew, hey, 5 o'clock everybody's leaving, or whatever that time everybody else is going, remind you to leave. I would get creative about trying to set timers, and maybe you're someone like me who has a watch that tells you to stand up every once in a while, maybe going into the settings and saying, you know what, how about doing that every 30 minutes instead of every hour? Or there are some really interesting little simple timers you can put on your computer that will throw a notification up that says, take a break, right? Take a 2-minute break. And I think those are helpful ways to make sure that this transition doesn't become more stressful than it already is. So
that's a good point.
That's my bit for today.
So really it's the two spectrums. It's structuring your day and your time so that you can be productive and you not get distracted and other things get in your way. But on the other end, don't let it go too far that you don't take care of yourself and don't observe
that
breaks
you're too comfortable. It's
get
too
up and
easy
walk
to work
and all that, right?
Yeah.
So it's a management. I'll say working from home, it's not my preference at all. I am much more of a work in an office environment. I'm much better in an office environment. I have to force myself to get good at working at home. But these tips and things that we just described here are big things that I think helped me get a little better at it. So it's great.
Well, and hopefully next time we do one of these, you'll actually be wearing clothes, because this has been
distracting,
difficult for me. Yes,
I'm sure it has been. So it's great for me. I don't know what's wrong on your end, but I'm totally comfortable with it.
I'm just, this is also probably a really good time to mention everybody: sanitize. Wash your hands.
Yeah, there's that.
Oh, I'm going to go sanitize right now from having been on this call with you.
Clean out your eyeballs a little bit. So that's good. All right. Well, listen, again, I hope everybody's being safe and taking care of themselves out there. I know it's some differences in the world right now. Some things are changing. We're here to help. So if you have any questions, ideas, thoughts, or just maybe your own work from home suggestions, we could share them in some follow-up episodes as well. Please feel free to write us. That email address is info@themesh.tv. That's info@themesh, THEMESH.tv. And we'd love to hear from you. Tell us how it's going, any kind of issues you're running into from a work from home situation, or maybe ideas that have helped you out. We can share with other people. We'd be happy to do that. So that'd be great. Yeah. Good.
All right. Good luck. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for listening. This has been Brothers in Tech. We'll be resuming back to our regular schedule with the next episode, but we felt like this was a good one to drop in. Take care, everyone. We'll look forward to talking to you next time.
Bye-bye.
What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.